Hello, and welcome to an adventure like no other. Far more than what you have known, there is something far more to be known than you can ever know. And it is all about you, the real you, your real awareness with your intuitive senses. You were never taught that the real you, your real awareness, is operating 5 bodies in cause and effect, restricting creation. You have been taught to think that you are only a one-dimensional human person, with a mind and emotions, and with a very short lifespan on this planet Earth. More than what your mind can grasp is your intuitive senses that can be opened to see beyond all your restrictions. You have always had an opening to see beyond what you have known, and this has been purposely kept from you, and this is where you have heard rumors and stories about your nightly dreams. Your so-called dreams is your opening to your intuitive senses that will allow you, the personal you, to excel beyond what you have previously known. Everyone has intuitive senses, and very few people take advantage of what is possible by recognizing something more than their mind can understand. Creation has its place for all of us, and then there is all life, which is far more than anything than what can become with creation. Everything we experience is necessary for us to survive with whatever we choose and decide our life to be. New Kevin Smith is the great witness to something more than what can be taught and learned in any school. It can be so that when anyone first listens to Kevin's intuitive side experiences, also known as real side experiences, from what their personal mind has known, Kevin's manner of expression will at first be rather different to comprehend. This is where this introduction and reading the new books and Facebook groups will help. Have fun deciding. Dwayne the Great Writer and Seer.
We are multi-dimensional beings in that our consciousness expresses and affects the myriad of body vehicles and aspects that make up our created self, operating in their respective dimensional areas as they do, for the purposes overall of collating experiential reference by which the recognition of the all-is can be determined. For it is the ideas of creation, parts and pieces of the isness everything whole reality, that can be isolated through the creational mechanics, idea fragments of the everything that are consciousness installed, and where consciousness is then the engine room effecting body forms which can decode these ideas into a simulation, that as awareness operates through the body vehicles, so these ideas and their effected simulation can be experienced. The parts, pieces, the fragments, the somethings which allow a recognition of the everything, through a comparison of the two positions available, that of creation and the nowness of the real awareness isness. As experiential reference is essential, that is, recognition can be accomplished, it stands to reason that the greater array and variety of experience we receive, the swifter this process of recognizing the true reality can be so. Hence why, as we embark on our awareness processes, when we set intent with the recognition of the true reality, so we tend to be the recipient of far more real-side experiences than ever before. For every experience in creation, be it physical level lifetimes or real-side guide-afforded experiences, all ultimately serve this purpose, irrespective of the nature of the experience or its source, that of viewpoint comparisons by which the all-is can be recognized. Up until the moment where we had decided to begin our processes of awareness, we still would have been operating multi-dimensionally. Our created self would still have comprised of the various body vehicles and aspects that it does, we still in reality would have been the everything creational, real awareness view, only now we are becoming aware of it as we set intent with the ears, as the guides take us through ourselves effectively, provide us our real side experiences, and we access to an ever greater degree the everything view position through the real awareness that we each actually are. A real awareness as a part of the isness everything that animates through all consciousness affected simulated experience and position as it does, and we become aware and are shown glimpses of our various body vehicles and aspects as they operate multi-dimensionally, as they effectively are tools for experience reference collating for our all-ears comparisons. Our aspects will be as varied in their activity as our overall focus and intent dictates, and where it is placed accordingly, up until the moment of ears recognizing a commencement. Expected can it be that our focus and attention be somewhat scattered and unregulated, expressing multi-dimensionally as it will, and where our various aspects and vehicles are operating accordingly, living their respective dimensional lives, and undertaking their chosen pastimes and activity. As we begin to place intent with the ears, so we bring our multi-dimensional selves into a line gradually, for such a focus takes the time it will to firmly cement, and until then we may have real side experiences revealing how our various aspects and vehicles may be scattered in regards to the extent of a focus with the true reality. Some may even be seemingly oblivious of the real awareness that actually is animating through all the created parts and aspects, locked into their own decided creational idea immersion as they are. Ultimately, if intent is absolute with the ears, this must reverberate throughout our multi-dimensional creational self, and where at that point we are operating in ways absolutely that make a sense with life, we are now standing with completely. And so it was, in this real side experience, I would seemingly be operating as another of my multi-dimensional aspects, one that was indeed intent set with the ears, and operating then accordingly with what makes sense, life and awareness speaking. I would be in a humanoid form predominantly, though throughout the experience constantly alternating my body type, generally maintaining the standard bipedal form, though with the variation of a feature and a detail. I was stationed on what appeared to be a large moon, operating within an extensive base or colony that practically covered the entirety of its surface. There would be quite the array and variety of body forms present also, and in residence within the moon colony, quite the veritable mixture of body forms and species. Despite the differences, there was a general unity amongst all those present, but with the expected situation and dramas, for the vast majority of those residing in the colony were personal self-immersed, absent of any interest or inclination in regards to their real awareness or the true reality it is a part of, and so most would be operating from a position of a personal self-attitude. Among the overall colony of a species would be one group that stood apart from the majority, a mixture of different species also, but each of which had intent established with the all-ears and on their respective processes of awareness. My dimensional aspect was a part of this isness recognizing a group, and impressions would suggest that those of my aspects group were other dimensional aspects of Nufriends from the physical level Earth. For as intent between individuals converges, so must experience effected, including multi-dimensionally, and where we may expect to always be in experiential association with those we share intent with throughout creation and the dimensions of it. For indeed, despite the forms of the aspects being at odds, appearance-wise, with the physical level counterparts, a number of the group I would recognize. The real awareness, as a part of the isness everything that animates through all consciousness effected form, body, vehicle, and aspect, can then determine the individuals that the aspects are an expression of, and this can be conveyed to the personal self, a personal self that alone would only have the simulation, the body forms in its midst, to draw its conclusions from as to their possible identities, etc. The colony would be of a very advanced overall technological nature, the various body forms residing there, including then the aspects of what were a physical level group of Nufriends, would have the adequate skills and ability where they could operate effectively in such a sci-fi environment and station. One of the pastimes or creational distractions would be along similar lines to Earth-based car racing sports, although of a far more sophisticated nature, reminding me of one of the more recent Star Wars movies, where the assorted species of a certain planet indulged in racing their respective ships and vehicles around a gauntlet for the entertainment of all spectating. For indeed, a race was in progress. The vehicles of choice could be best described as motorbikes, appearance-wise, though more advanced, lacking wheels, and where their motion was based on anti-gravity technologies. One of the members of my group of other dimensional aspects was a regular participant in the races. For indeed, much like it is on Earth, reward would be afforded for the victors of such sports, and the moon colony seemed to operate on a kind of monetary system where required was it to establish a position of work within the colony in some regard to facilitate self-sufficiency. The rest of the group of aspects and my own always would then be among the audience, overlooking an arena which served as the race track, and where we would always watch and cheer on the aspect of our group taking part in the races. There would be a moment in the experience where the aspect of our group would crash, and as he was unscathed, I would venture a joke or other. Should he have been injured, it wouldn't of course have been prudent to be jovial, though despite he walking away without a scratch, there would be one member of the group of aspects that incited the others into animosity directed at myself, on the basis of the joke I had uttered. The aspect would be female, one I didn't recognize as to her physical level human form, though in association with the group, which as I said, all were physical level Earth-based, including myself. She had the uncanny ability to make a mountain out of a molehill, as they say, to blow a situation out of proportion, effectively turning the group against me due to the innocent remark I had uttered. Rather influential was she, and I, or my aspect, was the recipient of much verbal abashing and abuse that I had to withstand. As the moments passed, most of the group would realize the folly of such action to be triggered by the female and to be reduced to effectively a pointless exchange of ideas that went nowhere. There were two of the group, however, more swayed by the female's influence, more captivated by her allure, and would continue to subject me to a character assassination continuously. As it transpired, the group of aspects and myself had our own position within the colony, as though our own self-sufficient community, if you will, with the various ways we each would draw in fundings to finance ourselves, such as the bike racing as one decided option for one of the group. Having returned now to our commune, the two of the group, seduced by the female and her evident desire to continue to have me subjected to belittlement, so the two individuals, and one was the same individual from earlier in this experience that I had recognized, they would be building a case within their own minds as to how I wasn't in the slightest bit interested in the recognizing of the ALLLISSS, that I was a solely personal self immersed and operating. This conclusion drawn from my harmless remark earlier, that had become exacerbated through the efforts of the female of the group. I have shared on a number of previous real side experiences that one of the means by which the dark forces can attempt our awareness process derailment is by inciting us into a reaction through the personal self, as we respond with emotion to what they bombard us with experience-wise. Anything created via the personal self, emotional response included, will draw us from the nowness of our real awareness position, where we not only are now more vulnerable, for we are absent of the unlimited potential capability the real awareness can afford our simulation inserted forms, and only have what personal self-skills we have developed to fall back on, but we also can lose access to the real awareness impressions and discernment, for we have removed ourselves from our real awareness creational oversight position. We are rather left floundering then within the limited personal self, and rather inadequate for multi-dimensional operating. Additionally, our personal self-reaction, if indeed we choose to react to what we are subjected to, can be along the lines of the created idea considerations of guilt, shame, and where we may act in accordance to have such created emotion alleviated. In this case, as I was continuously abashed with accusation of insincerity of real intent, as delivered by these two members of the group, as excited to do so by the very influential female, I would react with rage, instantly becoming as the personal self, losing all real awareness, indifference, and objectivity, and in response would declare that I would abandon my group of other dimensional awareness becoming aspects and proceed with my process of awareness in the absence of them. This was seemingly the objective of the disruptive female, very likely then a kind of group infiltrator, positioned there to generate discord within the group, and as I declared my intended self-expulsion, so the two who had been drowning me in accusation and contempt would as though realize the nonsensical nature of their actions, that they had been duped by the female. For despite what transpires creationally and within the arena of the personal self, the dramas and attitudes. Ultimately, we all are this real awareness with the same isness recognizing imperative, and where we more so progressively adopt a mentality of support of all beings, awareness speaking as a consequence, rather than operating destructively, discouragingly, or with dishonesty and deception. Regardless, I, or rather my aspect, was adamant in my going it alone determinism, and would proceed to pack my bags and establish myself elsewhere within the moon colony, deliberating over where I could apply my aspect's technological know-how that secured could be a finance-generating position. This would have the two individuals not return to their previous extent of accusation, but they would maintain the contention that I was stepping back and forfeiting my opportunity of his recognition, although this was far from my aspect's intention, just the idea of proceeding with it absent of the group. My body form was constantly alternating in design throughout the experience, as I said. It also would do so in automatic accordance with the thoughts, emotions, and attitudes I generated. As I said, I was operating from the personal self at this moment, incited into its activation and positioning, and so wasn't operating from a position of real awareness objective sense as to my situation, and as I stormed from the group's commune, my form would become as distorted as my attitude, a rather twisted reptilian design. Although we may choose to react and become a personal self immersed and operating and act in nonsensical accordance, as really, when it comes to derailing us from our awareness process, all the dark forces can do, or rather activate their plants and infiltrators to achieve, is to have us elect to derail ourselves. For we always are the deciders and of our intent placement. We can just as readily restore ourselves in positions of nowness, real awareness indifference, and simply chalk up whatever effects we had generated for ourselves via our personal self-reactions as a simply further experience and a viewpoint comparison for his recognition, as all experience serves for the purposes of, regardless of its nature. This was an aspect or part of my overall creation, and so still linked with the consciousness that effects it, as now I would find myself in my physical level house recreated on the real side, in the presence of the same two individuals of the group, and additionally the female inciter, although we all now were in our human version physical level forms. The recreated houses represent the consciousness on the real side, and that which features within them reveals the agreements we have, for nothing can feature in our experience absent of the idea being created or agreed with, consciousness installed, and then able to be affected into our experiential midst. Symbolically, the ideas we agree with, including the ideas that are the consciousness-affected body forms of others, are able to be present then within our recreated, real-side physical level homes. The two members of my group still would be retaining their attitudes of accusation. Evidently, my agreement maintained with them that they were featuring, in my experience, within the walls of my consciousness representing house. And where we place attention or focus is a further mechanism of the installing the idea that is the simulation of what claims it, In this case, the female infiltrator and very likely dark force plant had claimed my attention, and she had then my agreement. She could feature within my house my experience. And where we agree with others, we are agreeing with their consciousness, a consciousness of ideas that will comprise of what they will, including idea agreements the individual we have agreed with harbours. In other words, I am in agreement with all individuals the female is in agreement with, as I secure agreement with her, even if only fleeting. The equivalent of affording all those she is in association with, consciously and subconsciously, a backdoor pass into my experience, where they all can now feature in my experience, symbolically within the walls of my consciousness representing house, for the duration that my agreement with her is maintained. This would allow then the influx of a horde of monstrous, distorted body forms, loosely resembling humans, to descend upon the house, as these were beings in agreement association with the female, and now could claim access to my experience also. This was rather an intended occurrence on behalf of the now grinning female, as opposed to an unconsciously realized and inadvertent happenstance, and the two individuals of my group also present would at least recognize now the deception that was the female in light of this situation. For these particular twisted forms had the ability to as though infect others through a contact, as though to bestow upon the recipients of their touch a mutagen effect that would distort them in the same way that they were, reminding me a little of the mutants, a particular expression of a body form I once had dealings with on the real side, which could increase their numbers through a conversion of other body types to their kind in a similar manner, via physical contact. But just as we establish our agreements, we can sever them, and to sever agreement with the female would include the redacting of agreement to all body forms as ideas in her consciousness, including these twisted beings intent on infecting the two individuals and myself. This evidently was made so as the female faded from the scene, indicative of agreement withdrawing, and where we would seal the doors and windows that prevented the mutant creatures from gaining access to my house. Although, just prior to her departure, she managed to swing open the front door, a large bloated mutant would shamble in, and I would execute a kind of judo throw which sent it reeling across the living room and then promptly vanish. But before I could seal the front door, one of the mutants would reach in and caress my cheek with its gnarled fingers. Impressions would reveal that this would have a physical level body impacting consequence in some manner, as all ideas and agreements that begin on the real side and other dimensionally will. Necessary was it seemingly to swiftly bolt upstairs, for the top level of the consciousness representing house represents the real side and other dimensions aside from the physical, where all ideas will be instantly manifested prior to they filtering through gradually to the physical, the ground floor of our houses symbolically. My objective was then to very likely address the idea that was the malaise or distortion I had taken on, as the mutant made a contact with my body form, to neutralize it at its real side source before it impacted adversely through to the physical body, a case of redacting agreement, for absent of the idea, and the effect stemming from it, regardless of its nature, cannot then feature, but overall just an afforded view of another of my many multi-dimensional aspects, in association with other aspects, all of which have a physical level counterparts on the earth, and a glimpse of some of the experiences being received via an alternative vehicle afforded view, although that which transpires with our multi-dimensional selves will still filter through to the physical in some shape or form, the dumping ground, as DUANE has referred to it as this experience would clearly reveal.